All right, great seeing everybody. Good crowd today. Good to see all of you guys in. And hope y'all have had a great week. Hope you have had a week where you have seen God been using you again. Forgive me, I've been sick, and if I don't seem my bright, chipper, incredibly motivating self, it is because I am still sick. I do not feel that good. So just one of those things. All right, so I wanted to jump in and talk about something that happened to me Sunday night. It's called jumping to conclusions. And we all jump to conclusions. I'll tell you how I jumped to conclusions. So I woke up Sunday night, I'd say about 11. Sunday, night about 11. I went to bed about 9. Woke up with about 103 degrees of fever. Sherry was already asleep. I went from about 11 to 3 thinking I might literally, this might be it. I mean, it was so bad. I couldn't get out of bed. My legs are too weak. I was having vertigo. I've never had that before. Like, I've had vertigo, but not because of fever. I was literally just in. So all of this to say that I got in the water to see the Blues last week. Okay. And so I connected that to like this horrible thing called Vibrio, which is not a good thing. And you don't, and I had a cut on my leg, and I got in the water, and I did also. So I'm just saying all this. So I jumped to a massive conclusion that I was like, this was it. I need to go ahead and just, I'm going to end up in ICU. And I mean, it's weird how quickly your brain goes from, I haven't done that in like, I don't know, when's the last time I've done that? But I literally was thinking the absolute worst. And so, but jumping to conclusions is something we all do. It's something we all, and it's frightening, and it can be frightening. And when you get done with it, and when the situation clears, and when everything goes back to normal, you're like, okay, well, how did I think that? When I suffered with panic attacks, that's not unusually, I mean, that's unfortunate that anybody has to deal with that. But I look back on that, I was like, I spent a decade of my life jumping to conclusions. Now that's a serious mental thing that I had, and it's, a lot of hard work went into getting rid of that with the grace of God as well. But I mean, it was, I I couldn't like drive on the highway because if I did, I might have a panic attack and die. No one's going to be able to get to me. That's jumping, those dots don't connect, 90% of the people out there, those dots don't connect because it's not rational. And so when we jump to conclusions, we're making assumptions too quickly about situations that are in front of us, and especially situations that deal with people. All right. And so that becomes even more serious. In fact, we live in a culture, I didn't even think about it. We live in a culture where everybody's jumping to conclusions. This culture just doesn't care about the truth, doesn't care about facts. It just labels somebody, just labels somebody. Politically, we label people. All right. Some of them are justified. I look at all the way from President Clinton to President Trump. I really wasn't old enough to pay attention to the others. Although I was old, I should have been paying attention, but every one of them had obvious flaws, right? But some of the things that were said about these guys are not true. It's just, they're not true. And for all of them, things have been made up about them. And yet people have jumped to conclusions about who they are, what they believe, their ideologies, the way they behaved as president, all these different things. All right. And what that does is it hurts. One thing it does is it suppresses the truth of the situation. Okay. And that's and we're all looking for truth because say medically you jump to a conclusion about something happening in your body. Say you have a pain in your left side, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh, God, it's got to be cancer." I always remember the famous, Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, Kindergarten Cop, and he's like, "It's not a tumor," you know. But so you jump to the conclusion. Well, you got to go get it checked out. But before you got it checked out, you jump to the conclusion that you weren't going to make it, and you lived your life that way for months in fear and in sadness and in pain you know, and you finally go to the doctor and it's your appendix. And it's not life threatening. It was your appendix. Some people deal with life threatening stuff. It's real, but I'm just saying when you jump to conclusions, it does affect how you feel. It does affect how you view people. It does affect how you view yourself. And I think Satan loves for us to jump to conclusions because we react. We look at a situation, we look at something, and instead of reacting, instead of processing with spiritual gifts, we react with our emotions. And those are two very different things. All right. So assumptions. Jesus says in John 7:24, do not judge according to appearance, but judge correctly. People make mistakes when they don't have enough information. Limited information is the death to us all. Okay. We see a moment, not the whole story. We hear one side, but not the other. Religious leaders jumped to conclusions about Jesus. They saw him on the Sabbath breaking the law, but they didn't see him heal thousands during the week. They heard about it, they didn't see it. So, when you get a piece of the picture instead of the whole picture, I've been a victim of that in my own life. People only wanted to see a part of the picture. If I said something that was, offensive in some way, and we're all going to make mistakes, by the way, pastors make mistakes. But if that's all you remember out of the vast, if you only remember one thing that I said out of the volumes and hours of messages that have tried to help people and love people and motivate people and get people to understand who Jesus is, and if that's all you remember, then you're dealing with limited information and limited truth. And so how many times have you looked at somebody and saw something but misunderstood their actions? Okay. What assumption led you to believe something just because others, and remember, we love herds. We love the mob. Going along with the mob is safe. You're safe in the mob. And all of a sudden what happens is, instead of looking at all the information, we look at a soundbite. And what we have done is we've reduced people's lives to sound bites. I got people out there that can rail off a soundbite about me, and you got people that probably can do the same in your life. Now, being in my position, I've offered myself to a scrutiny more so than probably other places. A lot of people just live kind of in their small circle, family, a few coworkers, and so probably maybe that's not as large as other people who open themselves up to public life. It doesn't matter though. You're still, you still can misunderstand your wife's actions, your kids' actions. You can jump to a conclusion. And this is key. I'm wondering if so like, I've said this before, when you could read a paragraph and it's missing all these words, but your brain is able to fill in the words. Okay. Your mind is able to fill in the words. And And that's because you know English correctly. You know what verb, goes in front of a noun, or a noun goes after an adjective, or, whatever. I can't, that was actually my major, but it's not something I can think of right now. But you know what I'm talking about. You know the correct way in which things get filled in. And so you fill them in instantly. It's just a phenomenon. You've probably done that before. You've seen that little example. But it's not so easy with human nature. It's not so easy when you're dealing with real life situations. And so assumptions are not healthy. And that means if you're assuming something, you're in the, you know, I say playing field, you're in the field of gossip when you're assuming things. And the Lord definitely has a word about gossip, and we're all guilty of gossip. But I'm just saying, when gossip leads to destroying another human being, that becomes a very serious, uh, and very, I mean, just a place you don't need to be operating out of. All right. So how do you deal with the assumptions? Okay, so we all know assumptions are not healthy; they can lead us away from the truth. So this then slow down, listen. James 1:19 says everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And this is absolutely a biblical way to live your life, and it's absolutely not the way we're living our lives in society today. Just could not be further from the truth right now. We've assumed things. We have, I mean, I have, I love it when, you know, these reporters go out into these political rallies and stuff, whether they're the right or the left. And I've seen the left do it, I've seen the right do it. And I love it when they go, "Do you agree with this statement?" And they'll quote the person that said it, and they'll go, "Oh no, we don't agree with it." And they're assuming the person that they hate, that they're protesting against, said it, and it's actually the person that they love said it. And the right do it, and the left do it, and it's just, and there are no words, there's no defense to it, but it proves a point. It proves the point that whatever political pool you swim in, whatever cultural pool you swim in, whatever financial or economic pool you swim in, we are very quick to believe something. Okay, and again, that goes back to assumptions. And the scripture says this: be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And I can guarantee you, 9 times out of 10, if you would just listen to a situation, listen to the person that you were having that, division with, and you channeled your anger into compassion or into understanding. That's the better word, understanding. Then I think you will get to the answer quicker, and you will uncover the truth more powerfully. I've seen, unfortunately, the ugly side of that in church. I've seen religious leaders absolutely tell bold-faced lies about situations as they condemn not only other pastors, but also their own parishioners, just to stay in the pulpit, just to continue to get their paycheck. People, men and women that should never have been in the pulpit, but they got there through bullying and, creating. The worst is when they create suspicion, when they're quick to create a narrative. That's the worst part. And because of authority, people tend to believe. We've we believed. I don't want to get politically into all this stuff, but with COVID, we believed that COVID was, you know, came from an animal or a bird, whatever you believe that it was manufactured in a lab. I mean, we have proof of that now, but we were meant to believe because people with authority and with knowledge and professionals and scientists all said the same thing. And they told us this thing. I mean, I'm going to tell you the truth. I mean, if I, I'm, you have to really trust those people in authority. You really do have to trust them. Or you can become, I remember when I was in the hospital as a child, and my mom had to be my advocate because honestly, there were so many other people and kids that were really sick that they could only handle so much information. And so mom had to educate herself on what was wrong with me. And it was pretty complicated. And, when my pain medicine needed to be given and, why I was reacting the way. And she had to really become crash course into, surgery 101. And I think that when we start to really slow down and when we start to put the brakes on our emotions and we start listening and stop reacting, we start to really understand what it means to get all the information, to process it, and just to not blindly trust. Being an advocate means you're processing the information. You're standing up for another person, yes, but you have to process that information in order to do so. You have to know what position the person you're advocating for stands in. If they don't stand in a position of truth, then you have to deal with that accordingly. An advocate, you have to understand, just like a defendant has a lawyer. That lawyer has to understand if that person's telling the truth or not. Then they form a line of defense depending on the situation. You can't jump to conclusions. It's got to be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to become angry. All right. Now, with all of that said, um, I I I know every single one of us is guilty of this. All right. But I think maybe when I start getting God in front of these situations, I think in every moment I've had as a pastor, there's been maybe just a handful that I have. And the irony is I was, most pastors want to please people and help people. And we don't like conflict and we don't want to divide because you're dealing with a very unique organism, the family, the church of God. You're dealing with this ecclesia that's put together, very delicately in a lot of ways. And you don't want to cause conflict. You want everything to be good and happy and people to be happy. I think maybe 5 times in my ministry, I've had to do some really hard things because there were some really bad people that were not well, causing problems. And, and so the way I dealt with that was to get God in front of this situation. I got a board of people to come together and pray about the situation. I got a board of people to hear the facts and the things that were happening, just to make sure that I wasn't crazy. I had a board of people, and all of a sudden when you get together with others that are praying and you get God in front of the situation, Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." So all of a sudden, when we get into places of conflict, we abandon God's wisdom. I mean, we just abandon it. It's just like, okay, I'm going to assume this about this person, and I'm going to judge that. And because I'm going to assume, I'm going to judge what's happening with this person, and then I'm going to follow my own heart and my mind based on my judgment, and I'm going to move forward. And this person might lose their job. This person might be skewered in public opinion. Who knows what happens? But it's good. But instead, we trust God for our salvation. We trust God for our transition from death in death. We trust God that even in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Why? Because we trust God, but not when we deal with our own personal situations. And so Joseph is a great example of that. He's thrown into a pit by his brothers who are jealous, and all of a sudden, years later, 7 years later, the famine comes to Egypt. Joseph has been risen to power in Egypt. He's saved. He's had a dream that this was going to happen, and his brothers come back to be fed, and they don't recognize Joseph. And Joseph could have done some really bad things to the brothers, but he doesn't. He says, "You intended this for evil, but God intended this for good." And he forgave them. And that's a powerful moment, because what Joseph did with his life is he put God in front of it. And I'm going to tell you, when you put God in front of it, patience is going to be born. Slow to speak is going to be born. Slow to anger, putting away your emotions is going to be born. When God's not in the situation, man, you will fly off the handle. You will do all these things. You will have all these normal reactions that you deal with every single day. But when you put God in the situation, different outcomes happen. Okay, different things begin to happen. I'm going to say love begins to come to bubble up. Understanding comes to bubble up. 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, "Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." When you put love into a situation with a person, not that you're just sort of being naively not you're moving into the situation in a naive way. Yeah, you're open mind. Yeah, you have an open eyes. Yeah, you have an open mind and an open heart, but you know, you give people the benefit of the doubt before you tattoo, guilty on their forehead. That's what love does. It gives people the benefit of the doubt. And love, really, the barometer for love is, do you just assume the worst about people or the best? Is it easier to be negative about people or positive? Because love is going to lead to grace. And even if there is something that has been done wrong, and even if there is a character flaw, we don't print that on a banner and raise it up for the world to see. Instead, we're trying to help that person out of that. The banner we're trying to raise in the life of another person is a child of God, forgiven, bought and paid for. You were bought and paid for. Why not somebody else who's made a mistake? Why not somebody else who's gotten it wrong? Why brand them, or jump to a conclusion? And I'm going to tell you right now, there's some people that have done some bad things, but there are worse people that have taken that bad thing and made it worse because of lies and gossip and innuendo. And here we go again. Even the thing that they've done, we've all done pretty much the same things in life. Okay, just to different degrees. We're all guilty of pretty much the same things. We've just done them either more habitually or more, obsessively, or, some of us haven't grown out of it. I mean, we've all done the same things, and yet we're very quick to pull to get the log. I mean, the speck out of somebody else's eye before we get the log out of our own. And again, I don't know, and that's even more insidious in my opinion. Or just look the other way when somebody does the same thing, and you just say, I'll just sweep that under the rug because that's my brother or my family member, or my spouse or my child. But I'm going to definitely pick up the stone to massacre the other person because I don't like that guy. So it's a very interesting thing when we, jumping to conclusions and the horrific roads it leads us down. So I'd like you to think about that, in your own life. I'd like you to think about where that is coming in your life, how that is being processed in your life, and how you're going to slow that down. Let God get in front of it. Don't assume. Stop jumping to conclusions. Listen, and let love start to be something that you listen with, a lens that you look through as you see the situation. And I promise you, when that happens, not only will you be better for it, but you're going to avoid saying things and reacting to things in ways that you never dreamt of before. And then I think what happens is you're going to heal. You'll heal people instead of divide and hurt people more. All right. Guys, I'm going to pray with you, and then I'm going to set you loose. Here we go. Father in heaven, gracious God, just thanks for this day. Thanks for this time together. We all jump to conclusions, and it's time that we stop. It's time to let you in front of the situation. Slow to anger, slow to speak, and open our ears and our heart to listen. Father, let love be a part of it. As we let love be a part of it, that we might hear another person's heart and story. And by doing so, Father, that we let understanding be born, grace and mercy be born. Father, today we go out into this world, which is a different world than we ever dreamt of. It's one that's quick to judge, quick to cancel. But Father, not for us today. We're quick to listen, quick to understand, and to have patience as we see the whole story and not just parts of it. Be with these men as they do just that, so they can be a light for you. We ask this always in Christ's name, and we say together, amen. All right, guys, blessings to you always. Don't get sick, and open your heart to the truth, all right? And be a light out there, guys. All right. We love y'all. Take care, my friends. We'll see you soon. I'm here for you always. Give me a shout when you need me. Take care.